Hello everyone, this is Steve Huff from SteveHuffPhoto.com, and I am here today with a brand new camera from Ricoh / Pentax, the GR, the brand new GR, which now includes a huge big fat APS-C sensor, which is a huge improvement over the previous GR4, GR3, etc. We now have a camera that competes with the big guys like the Sony NEX series, the Nikon Coolpix A, and defeats the current or previous Pocket Champ, the Sony RX100. The APS-C sensor brings this GR into a whole new level of image quality and performance, and I am happy to say that it's really lacking in no area. This has a couple weaknesses, which I'll just tell you right off the bat. The autofocus speed is about the same as the Nikon Coolpix A, which is not crazy fast or blazing performance, but it's still very good. It's very accurate. You have many focus modes, including pinpoint, so you can really nail the focus on something if you want something small and detailed to make sure it is in focus. Just a note, this video I am recording with something new, the Samsung NX300. I have no idea how it's going to go. This is the first time I'm trying the video mode, but it looks good on the LCD screen. But let me turn around the GR, and as you can see on the back, you have all your controls accessible. I like this wheel up here. It's an adjustment. Let me turn on the camera, and I'll show you exactly what it does. If you push this button in, you start getting to all of your settings you can do with just this one button. So one button by your thumb, you can basically control almost everything on the camera. The first one comes up with the ISO. You can set it to auto high, or your choice of ISO going all the way down to ISO 25600. In my full review over at SteveHuffPhoto.com, I have crops from the higher ISO so you can see how it does. If I shot this camera, I would top out at 3200. The high ISO is not as good as the Nikon Coolpix A or the current crop of APS cameras, but as I said in my review, it kind of gives your images a more edgy filmic look, which I like because the noise is not objectionable, and you can still get really clean results. There's some noise that creeps in even at 1600, but again, it looks really good, especially if you're shooting in black and white. So if we move over using the thumb dial here, the next menu you get to is for your picture quality settings. I have it at RAW plus JPEG because I wanted to see how the JPEGs would come out of the camera, and they look very, very good. The RAWs you can do a little bit better. So you have RAW plus JPEG, large, medium, small, and extra small. I'm not sure who would use that. Then you have your aspect ratio. I had it set to 3:2. You can also do 4/3 and 1:1, which will give you the square format. So that's really cool to have. Here's your autofocus and focus modes, which I really like. You have multi-spot AF, which is your typical multi-pattern autofocus mode. Spot AF, which is what I normally use. I keep it in the center and focus and recompose. Pinpoint AF. So if you have, say you're shooting a certain leaf on a tree and it's focusing behind that leaf, set it to pinpoint and you will be able to focus on exactly what you want to focus on. Subject tracking, it has autofocus tracking. You have manual focus and your snap focus, which means you can set the camera to a certain distance, say 2 meters, 2.5 meters, and when you press that shutter button, it's already pre-focused to that distance. You also have infinity, so if you want to just keep it at infinity and set it to, say, f8, you can probably get pretty much anything in focus. So here we go on to the next one, which is your exposure. This is multi-exposure, center, and spot metering. So you have it all right there at your thumb. Very, very cool to have. Press it again and you're back to your screen. Now this Ricoh GR has a fixed 28mm lens, which is really like an 18.3mm. But when you do the crop factor of the APS sensor, you get a 28 f2.8 lens. So you still have a pretty good wide angle. It's not a 24 or 21, which I think is too wide sometimes. And while you don't have the classic 35mm focal length, what you do have, which I set up right here, and I will show you with this sample, I set up on the button on the side. The button on the side is default for your picture effects, but I changed it because you can change and customize any button on this camera to your liking. So I changed it to activate the 35mm crop. So right now you're seeing a 28mm. If I press it, that gives you 35mm. So you crop in a little bit closer, and basically all it's doing, you're not going to get the qualities of a 35mm lens. You're going to get the focal length of a 35mm lens. So it's all it's doing is taking that 28mm file and cropping it in the camera to a 35mm equivalent, much like the Sony RX1 does with its 50 and 75 crop modes. But I found this really cool to have because sometimes 28 is a little wide and you want to get closer. So you lose a little bit of file size. The files are smaller, but the quality is still very good. So on the back, you have your FN1 button here. You have your FN2 button here, which is all configurable to anything you want to configure it to. You have your exposure compensation rocker right here. As soon as you touch it, it automatically brings up your exposure compensation, and you can see in real time what it's doing to your photos. So say I just want that Diet Coke can to come in kind of in a shadowy, dark, dramatic way. I set my exposure compensation down to -3.3, and bam, there we go. So it works very well. I found the exposure modes of the GR are among the best I have used in these kind of cameras. The auto white balance is among the best I have seen in these kind of cameras. So it's really a solid performer. On the top you have your mode dial, which I have at an aperture priority. You can also, and it's not going to turn by accident because you have to push this button right here to activate it. So you have your program mode, aperture priority mode, shutter priority mode, movie mode, manual mode, and yes, this does take HD video. So if I were to aim it at the Coke can, now I'm recording video on the Ricoh GR, but there's really no stabilization, but it can give you decent quality HD video in your pocket, basically. So anywhere you go, you have the ability to take DSLR quality photos as well as HD video. Your smartphone does the same thing, except you're not going to get those DSLR quality photos out of your iPhone or equivalent. You also have a full auto mode on the top, which is a little green doohickey there, and you have your 3 custom settings, so you can set this sucker up to anything you like. So it's all your preferences. The camera also has a built-in flash for those times you want some fill flash or to light up a dark scene. That's always good to have. Ricoh does sell external viewfinder, so you don't have to go without one like you do on the Nikon Coolpix A. You also have, there are so many things on this camera. Let's go into the menu mode. Or before I do that, I'll show you how easy it is to set the macro mode. If you want to shoot in macro mode, you just press this macro button. Oh, let me get out of auto or the exposure compensation. You press this macro button, macro off, macro on, macro off, macro on, macro off. So it's very easy to turn your macro on. So if you want to have your macro on, you can get closer to your subject. So there you go. Let's go into the menu and see what we have here. You have your snap focus distance. Oh, let me go to the top because this is not the top. Let's go all the way to the top. Okay, you have your focus is where you can pick also, besides using the thumb dial, you can pick right here what kind of focus setting you want. And like I said, you have your multi-AF spot, pinpoint, etc. If you want to change the snap focus distance, which is where the camera automatically sets focus, you can go 1 meter, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 5, or infinity. It comes default at 2.5, but you can set it as close as you want. You have a setting for your moving targets for continuous mode, I believe that is. I have not messed with that so much. Exposure metering, you have multi-center and spot. Picture format, we've been over that. You choose your aspect ratio. The camera effects, you have black and white, an antique kind of black and white. You have a high contrast black and white. You have cross process, positive film, bleach bypass, retro, miniature, high key. My favorites are just the high contrast black and white, cross process, and black and white. The positive film can also be fun. It'll give you a little bit of a richer color, kind of like a slide film. So that's what that's trying to mimic. Image settings, which go above and beyond the picture effects, are vivid or standard or custom, so you can set your own. Crop to 35, you can set that to a button like I did right here on the side, or you can turn it on and off in the menu. You can imprint the date, continuous shooting, auto bracket, multiple exposure shooting. Interval shooting is also in here, which is really cool to have. A lot of people like that. Custom self timer. You can set the self timer to tell the camera how many pictures to take and at how often to take them, so you don't have to just settle for one self-portrait or whatever you're trying to do in 10 seconds. White balance, you have auto, multi-P auto, and all your usual suspects. I've been shooting on multi-P auto, which I found to work the best. ISO settings, you can do all of your ISO settings right here. Exposure compensation, if you don't want to press this handy dandy thumb rocker, you can go in the menu. Dynamic range compensation, I keep that off. I don't like when a camera messes with the dynamic range by using software because it makes the images look fake. Slow shutter speed, noise reduction. So if you're a slow shutter speed, you can have noise reduction on or off. Auto aperture shift, off. Flash exposure compensation. So you go into all of that. So let's go to the next menu and see what we have here. This is all your settings, where you can set up your settings, delete your settings, customize your settings. The lever settings you can set to anything you want. ISO, picture size, aspect ratio, exposure metering. Adjust direct ISO control. Mode dial settings, set your FN buttons to whatever you want. The effect button setting, as you can see, I have it on 35mm crop. All of your custom settings are in this second menu. Now let's go to the third menu with the tools, and you have all kinds of stuff. Format the SD card, format the internal memory. This actually has internal memory that you can take a few pictures on if you don't have a memory card. Reset file numbers, change file names, copyright notice. I threw in stevehufffphoto.com, which is me. And we also have the LCD brightness, the sounds and the volumes of your sounds, sleep mode, when do you want it to go into sleep mode, ISO step settings, ISO auto high settings, ND filter. This camera has a built-in ND filter. I leave it on auto, so if it's too bright outside, it automatically turns it on, and you don't have any problems with your exposure. Your level settings, your level tilt calibration, because it has a level meter in here, as you can see at the bottom. See how it moves when I move the camera? You have guide options if you want guides to appear on the screen. And you have all kinds of, there's just so much customization in this camera. FN button settings, one press zoom ratio, playback, video out mode, NTSC, HDMI output auto, and there goes all your settings. So as you just heard me say, HDMI out, this does have an HDMI out right there. So if you wanted to take video and show it on your HD TV, you could do that. So that is basically a rundown of the Ricoh GR APS-C sensor pocket camera. And yes, this does fit in my front jeans pocket. It slides in and out easily, just like the Nikon Coolpix A and Sony RX100. In my opinion, the GR, it just squeaks by past the Nikon for the top pick of the pocket cameras, simply because I prefer the color output of the GR. I feel it feels better in the hand, and the controls are better. And also, it's $300 less than the Nikon Coolpix, which has the same specs. Where the Coolpix will beat the GR is in high ISO in low light. You're going to get cleaner output in low light settings from the Nikon, but the GR will give you a more filmic kind of look with a gritty noise that in some cases will look like film. Not really, but closer than the Nikon will get you. So I highly recommend the Ricoh GR. I'm glad they took the step to APS-C. That's where everyone's going. You can read the full review at stevehufffphoto.com. It's there with loads of sample photos, ISO crops, and all kinds of good stuff. So thanks for watching this Ricoh GR overview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.